If the SPY completes this signal right here, we very well could see it go to a new all-time high. It doesn't mean we're not paying attention to the shorter time frames, but in this video, we're going to be going over the macro side of things and paying attention to some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD, and Meta going forward throughout this video. We're going to be paying attention to the macro side, which right here looks like we could get a push higher that then leads us into a new all-time high. It doesn't mean we're not going into shorter time frames. Remember to subscribe so you can come back, because on Sunday, we're going to go into the shorter time frames and talk about a pullback. But after that pullback, we very well might be heading towards a new all-time high in the SPY. Quick note before we get started on the SPY, remember that course is only $149 for the next 7 days, and then you can be a part of Patreon where you get those weekly ranges. So if you have questions about any of that, we're live every single morning throughout the week. So if you want to come back, ask some questions in our live chat. I will answer them in real time. But looking in the SPY right now, we need our drawings back up. Boom, now all our drawings are back up. What happened as of this week? Well, we came down into an area where we tested that 20-week moving average. If you want me to pull that up for you real quick, you can see that right here. You see that reaction off of our 20-week moving average, and now we're starting to head in the upward direction. But we're heading into an area where we could be connecting with that 5-week moving average. So I wanted to show you guys how we were paying attention to our first sell zone, and now we're seeing a little bit of resistance, not able to close above the 20. Now, as we go into shorter time frames, we're going to talk about some downsides, so make sure you're subscribed so we can talk about those shorter time frames with you, because we could see a pullback before this actually proves. But the signal that you really have to be paying attention to here, which could lead us into going all-time highs, is the crossing over the MACD and getting into positive territory on the daily scale. This very well can be a good pullback at this point, a good little correction down to that 20-week moving average, and then we could see that support come in and see that bullishness. Now, do I think that happens right away? I think we have the opportunity for a pullback, so don't think you have missed out on the big upward move at this point. The daily MACD has not crossed. Now, the thing that's interesting with this is the RSI is actually right on the center line. It's literally almost right at 50. So that means to me, we haven't confirmed the upside just yet, but if this signal were to confirm, we do have that potential to test the high, go make a new one. So we're going to be paying attention to that a lot throughout next week. And on the Qs, we're paying attention to the same thing, right? That crossing up into positive territory, and notice where is the RSI? It's right at that center line. So we haven't got the crossing of the MACD. We haven't gone positive yet, but when we do go positive, I assume we'll be retaking this important price point of 438.28. I think 438.28 is a great level to consolidate and then see a breakthrough for a new all-time high for the Qs. So pay attention to that. Remember, we're going to give you the ranges for the whole month of May next week in the Patreon, okay? So down below, you can go on that Patreon to get the monthly expected moves for each stock that we do cover on this channel. But I just wanted to point out, we're seeing that resistance come in at that 20-day moving average. So now we can see that drift down from this area, and that'll make more sense when we go into the shorter time frames on Sunday. So make sure you're subscribed. But at this time, what can we see? Well, what if this daily momentum starts to just take over and we see a rip to the upside? Well, we want to make sure we are taking back 438.28. I think that's very important that we'll get this crossing of the MACD. If we're able to retake that, I would assume now we're going into positive territory, which means the next move is here, and most likely we are going to make a new all-time high in the Qs. So I just want you to pay attention to that, because there is some very bearish things being said right here, and it very well could continue, and that's why we're going to talk about that on the shorter time frames on Sunday. But for now, what if we are reacting off this zone? What if we're reacting off our 20-week moving averages and we start to head higher? We have to know how we can really get screwed out of a trade. And right now, if you're taking any downside, well, if you get a couple green days here, we actually could get this to cross up into positive territory. And we have a ton of earnings next week, so we have to be cautious out there. But this is what it looks like on the daily. I just wanted to pull up the weekly on the Qs to give you a little different structure here, just stating how. What could we do? Well, we could go get some kind of double top. We could see some kind of reaction that leads us to some downside up in this area up here. So I'm really going to be paying attention to my monthly ranges, because if we start to hit one of those very early on to the upside or the downside in the early points of the month, then I'm going to be saying, hey, we most likely will be seeing a reaction up if I see the structure below us. So we're going to be paying attention to a lot. As of right now, you lost that 20-week. Now you took it back for the Qs. So this is actually a good sign if we can see another green week here and get above 438. And I would really mark 438.28 on your charts. Now you're probably thinking, what does this mean for my stock that I'm paying attention to? And that's why we're going to go into these individual stocks. Apple is one that has earnings, and I just wanted to show you this on the daily. I just wanted to show you this on the daily because Apple is showing how it has the momentum dying out. And if it has some good news, what can happen? Well, when you have good news and the momentum is dying out to the downside at the same time, we can get a massive reaction here, even getting past this zone. Okay, so what we could see from Apple going on into next week, maybe it wants to pull all the way down and then see that reaction. But as of right now, you do have that confirmation of the crossing of the MACD, of this divergence down here on the MACD and RSI at the same time. And I'm going to tell you guys, this is very, very significant for the RSI, okay? Very significant. You're coming down to readings of, 21 or something like that, and then you're going all the way up in this divergence to a reading of 36.47. So you're getting really close to crossing that center line, but I want you to notice what happened on Friday. We weren't able to cross the center line on the RSI, so we may need to dip down a little bit to find some buyers. We're going to talk about this for Apple on Sunday. So come back, make sure you're subscribed, turn on those notifications, and join us live because we're live every single morning. And we can talk about trade setups, we can talk about stocks, we can talk about if the stock you're looking at, hey, if you need another opinion, I'm here for you. I'll talk about it from the technical perspective. And if you want to learn that stuff, you can go in the link in the description. Get that for $149 for just a short period of time here. Now, something to deal with Tesla about is actually it looks a lot like Apple. It's giving a similar signal, whereas triple divergence, right? It's giving you a triple divergence down here at these lows, and then you see, hey, earnings, they take that as good news, even with the terrible print. Tesla saying, hey, we're going to try to make a affordable car happen, affordable EV happen, and I think that is a very good thing. If you're part of my live streams, I've been talking about the first EV company that really tries to make an affordable option will see some pumping up in their stock price because that is a very, very good thing to do. Now, the thing with this is saying we're making it in the future. We're fast laning it a little bit for the future, which just tells you this hasn't happened yet. So as of right now, this is a rumor. And once that news comes out, that might be priced in and that might actually sell off. So for Tesla, I'm really paying attention to this zone up here. If it's going to get very, very bullish around 200, well, what if we see a huge reaction up and then we kind of do something like this over time and then we create a head and shoulders. So this is the macro side thing I would really be paying attention to for Tesla. See if it's able to create that structure. As of right now, you need to get above 180.92. 180.92 is a very important level to take back. You can see all the resistance coming up in this area. You can see the support in that area, the support in that area. So we know it's important. If we can take that back, then I think it's a tick up for the bulls. I just wanted to look at this on the weekly scale here for you and show you it has not rotated back fully up, right? It has not rotated up just yet. So we do have some room in this move if we want to get very, very bullish, because if this weekly turns up, who's to say it's not just going to keep going? So at this point, I would really be paying attention to this area right here. If we can build some structure, well, then we very well might actually test this level back here of 267 for Tesla over the next few months, okay? It could take some months for that to happen, but we're going to be paying attention. I'm leaning towards some kind of selling coming in once we get a new all-time high for the SPY and the Qs. Now, Amazon did do something on the weekly that is very interesting. It actually curled over on the MACD, okay? It curled over on the MACD last week, so that is something to pay attention to. But the cool thing that it did throughout the week was it actually tested the level we were really paying attention to. And if you were quick with this, you could have made some good money because of those weekly ranges. So the weekly ranges can be very useful. Why? Because you see a dramatic move, which means what? Well, people own options, and this is priced in by the options market. And so therefore, when you do drop dramatically below this level, well, people start to take profit on their shorts, and that actually causes the stock to go up here, staying above that expected move. Because this was unexpected, you have to think of the mentality of people. Oh, I just made a bunch of money on Amazon. This is more than even I would expect. Even if they're not paying attention to these levels, their emotional side's probably telling them, hey, I'm making more money than I expect right here, so I'm going to sell some of those to take some profit, and now we see that bounce come in. So what I'd be paying attention to on the daily scale for Amazon, you can see it down here. We have the opportunity to make another point of divergence if we want to see some upward buying. And we really, really do. Now, this does have earnings very, very soon throughout the week, so we're going to want to pay attention to the shorter time frames. But remember, earnings is something that is a 50-50 flip. I would more so be looking to react to a different stock right after the earnings because we've been seeing some huge moves with the earnings. So this week is going to be very, very good to have those weekly expected moves, especially with earnings. So what would we need to do to see Amazon head to a higher level? We need this daily MACD to cross up. If this daily MACD can cross up, hey, we can create a point between all these highs and maybe we go touch something up here, right? That's what we would most likely do if we see a good print from their earnings. But because earnings is there, we're coming into a point of resistance. Well, if that news is bad and we start to lose 166.12, well, that's where that gap is. Okay, so that's where that gap is. So I would really expect us to come and fill this gap down here at about 158.50. I think that's a good level to pay attention to going on into the next couple of weeks when we do have earnings right around the corner. But people are pretty hyped about Amazon still, and we're seeing that spending still increase. So Amazon does have a good chance to head higher here according to these signals and this buying pressure right here at 166.12. NVIDIA is huge and looks like it is up for a huge move if it can continue to be bullish. Now, this is very, very bullish. You're taking back all the moving averages. You're getting above the center line on the RSI. You're literally kissing there. You're ready to cross on the MACD, and look where it is. It's right by the center line. So positivity can very much so come now, and then we'll have to pay attention to what happens with its earnings later on. Now, earnings is pretty far off, so I expect this to take some time and then give us some kind of direction here. Maybe it's just a risk to reward to take this to the downside at this point, but I would really just be paying attention to this right here curling up. If we can go anywhere up here, I don't care if it's above 1,000. I just care if it's making a divergence up here in this level. And if I want to play this move, well, we can talk about that in the shorter time frames on Sunday, how you would play an upward move for NVIDIA. And it's very, very simple. Now, one thing I am looking at right now is we're right now rejecting the crossing of the MACD to the downside on the weekly. We came down towards that 20-week moving average, something we've used as support before, and now we're seeing that build back up. So the fact that we're rejecting this cross on the MACD leads me to believe, yeah, we could see some kind of pullback early on in the week, but maybe we end the week up again, and then we see that as a full rejection, and we get a slight divergence right here on the RSI down here. So I'll be paying attention to this before NVIDIA's earnings. It could go ballistic with some news coming out this week with earnings and some some geopolitical stuff maybe calming down, and we have data going on throughout the week. So there's a lot to pay attention to, a lot of rocks in our stream and on this channel. We trade like water. So it's important to pay attention to the shorter time frames, but good to keep the macro in perspective. I think you got a good shot to go up to 1,000 over the next couple of weeks, maybe even before earnings, and then we see that thing drop off. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be trading around earnings, right? I'm not going to be trading around earnings because it just depends. It's a 50-50 flip. I don't know what the numbers are. You don't know what the numbers are. So we need to be cautious with NVIDIA around that earnings and maybe just play a different stock. AMD finally saw some buying up. Remember, this one's been very, very weak, and you're actually about to get the 5-week to cross the 20-week. Very, very bearish sign there. So I want to go into a daily and just see, well, look at that. It looks like it has the opportunity to curl up. It looks a lot like NVIDIA here wanting to cross up on this MACD. The only problem with AMD at this point, the only problem with AMD and why it might not see a new closing high above 210 is just because we're really far down on this MACD. All right, we're really far down. We haven't crossed on the RSI like we did on NVIDIA, and therefore we could see a strong move. But will that be able to hold above 183 at that point? Is that just going to set up some kind of lower high? That actually is more probable for AMD. So I'd pay attention to that. This could be a very big move, but that might be ripped away very quickly once we get some bad news down the line. So just pay attention. We might be seeing some kind of big bullish move up, and then that creates another point of divergence. And that would say, hey, in April, we actually didn't get the top, and we're going to get the top in May. Now, Meta had earnings, and look at this, a green number, a green number, a green number, but bad overall, right? We see that price go down by almost like 15% at one point. So now we're down like, I think it's like 9%, but we're paying attention because we're bouncing. So shorter time frames are going to be very important for stocks after their earnings, seeing if they can build up on the MACD on that 30-minute and just cross back down. That would be a good signal to kind of ride it down. But as of right now, they produced good earnings. So if we actually get some good news throughout the market and we retake 453.08, I think that we actually could see Meta buying back up, curling up on this MACD, and it might just want to fill this gap and then start to fade. We'll pay attention to that. It's a little bit deeper into negative territory, but not too far. So if that wants to fully go positive, we do still have the opportunity to test this high and make a new one. With this drop off, though, you'd have to say, well, that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. So we might just get a lower high from Meta going forward. We're really just going to be paying attention to these daily MACDs, seeing if they curl up, when do they curl back down, and are they creating divergence? That will really help us out, and being patient will help us out in this market. But as volatility looks like, which we're about to look like, it looks like it might turn back up. So we're going to go into the shorter time frames on volatility on Sunday, and I think that will be something to really pay attention to for some downside before we actually head up from here. Right before we get into the volatility, I just wanted to show you the dollar, how it is once again breaking out to the upside while we are seeing an upward move. So we're seeing an upward move. The SPY almost up 1%, but the problem here is the dollar up almost 0.5%. So this here is breaking out of this flagging that I had here, and we could see another upward move. We could reject this crossing at this point and just turn right back up. And maybe that's the selling we see come in early on in the week, and then we see that buying back up with some good earnings and some good data. Maybe that Fed interest rate helps you out a little bit. So we'll pay attention to that going forward. And this is something that you really want to keep on your radar. If the dollar keeps climbing higher while the market climbs higher, that is a very, very bad signal. And maybe we're about to see some kind of rug pull. But if the dollar can head up while the stock market bases out, that would be more of a normal sign at this point. TLT I just wanted to talk about because we have a bunch of 2-hour divergences down here, and we get the Fed interest rate decision, and these have been beaten up for a long time. So the fact that the bond market is not really buying into this move right now is a little bit worrisome, and it's been dropping off for a very long time. So you have to say eventually the stock market's going to catch up to the smart money here. But if this wants to actually curl up on the daily, what can happen? Well, we're still in a channel. We're still in a channel at this point. So 93, anywhere up towards this trend here can happen. But what if that starts to break? Okay, so if that breaks, I'd expect some kind of flight to safety being going on here. So at this point, it looks like TLT could rotate up, and it looks like this week we actually might see those yields come back down. Volatility. What were we talking about with volatility last week from the macro side? Well, what levels to pay attention to? Well, the level of 15, right? And the level of 13. Those are the two major levels, and I think this 12-12 could come into play if we see that, big push upward to all-time highs. So what I'm expecting here, and when we go into the shorter time frames, it will make sense, some kind of reaction from where we're at now in volatility, and then that starts to subside, and then we start to wedge pretty good right here. I think that is very, very likely that we get some kind of pop in volatility, and then that just drops off throughout the week. So I would pay attention to that going forward. If we are going to see some more dramatic selling, well, we got to zoom in. We got to zoom in really, really close here because something very interesting happened, and that would be this right here. So this is a big crash signal, and I know we're very zoomed in, but this is your 50, this is your 200 in white, and those need to cross for a big crash signal and to hold above. When the 50 holds above the 200, that's a massive crash signal, and you notice right when we're about to, what happens, it starts to go sideways, and it doesn't want to do it at this point. So that's something to pay attention to. We could be getting one more bullish pop that brings this back down and then curls back up. So really still pay attention to this signal because it is a major sell-off signal. It doesn't mean we can't see bounces and things like that, but if we start to use the 50 as support above the 200, it would be a very, very worrisome sign going forward. So I believe going on, and why you should subscribe for Sundays, because I think we're going to get some kind of downturn, and we can see that from the shorter time frames, but I think that downturn is a fake out, a bear trap, and we will most likely see stocks try to head higher and test on the Qs that level of 438.28. The main takeaway here is if we pay attention to the bigger time frames, we can see a lot of things curling up, and we very well could see that reaction to go to new all-time highs. So we have to pay attention to upside. It doesn't mean we can't trade the shorter time frames because as of right now, it looks like a small pullback or maybe some kind of drop is coming early on next week. And so we're going to pay attention to that and give you those weekly ranges on Patreon. And if you want to learn any of this stuff, it's very, very good to take that course. All I'm hearing is positive feedback, and I think you will get a very good understanding of these indicators and why they are so important and how you can use them with my bear market strategy, which is something that's in the course as well. So I hope you guys, take some time this weekend to dedicate yourself to some learning, and I really appreciate everyone for the good feedback on that. And if you have questions, join us live every single day of the week because we do answer questions about the course. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I really, really do. And then I hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading the rest of the week, but you're going to get more luck on Sunday when you come back for the shorter time frames. All right. Have a good weekend. Peace.